Hey everyone, happy Thursday. This is Jake here at Whatever, where we literally talk about whatever. It is the weekly men's mental health check-in. If you're coming from Facebook or Instagram, or if you're listening to this on YouTube or one of the podcast platforms that I'm going to have this out on, then welcome. If you're new, welcome. If you're returning, I really appreciate it. And today is going to be somewhat short of a video. It's, as the title suggests, as the thumbnail suggested rather, pride and ego being the progress killers. And this is something that resonates with me because my pride has warped into ego in the past, and it has prevented me from seeking the help that I needed, because then ego would then consequently warp into arrogance. And it's okay to be prideful. It's okay to have some sort of pride, but you also need to be grounded. You need to have humility, and you need to be humble in order to ground yourself. So that way it doesn't warp into these other things, and it's a snowball effect. And pride and ego can definitely get in the way of making progress, being your best self, or seeking the help that you need. So society used to reinforce, not so much nowadays. I do think that society in general has, in a way, from what I've seen anyway, from what I've seen and what I've heard, it's kind of punched down on masculinity. Now, masculinity in and of itself is not inherently dangerous. It's how men have used it. It's letting it get out of control, and where that term toxic masculinity comes in. But masculinity is just a man trait. We're masculine creatures. There are women that are masculine in some ways, and it's not necessarily a terrible thing. It's just how you use it, in what capacity that you use it, and how you use it. But in recent years, I do believe that men have been tapping in more to their emotional selves in order to combat some of this stuff, maybe from what they've been told, or maybe they had some sort of awakening. Maybe they've kicked their pride and ego to the curb, and they realize, like, look, I really need to work on some stuff because it's affecting how I interact with other people. And I do know, and like I said, I speak from experience when I tell you that my pride was getting in the way of me making progress. So it's okay to be proud, have pride in your country and stuff, and pride in yourself. But that pride can also get in the way if you let it. One example of this for me personally, and it could be something simple, really dumb, simple thing that I was too prideful to do in my Air Force days, was ask for help. Especially when I needed to lift something extremely heavy and I knew I wasn't lifting it the right way, or I thought I was pretty macho. I had been going to the gym. We can all relate, fellas. Been going to the gym, start lifting stuff heavily, and then you don't think in the future. If you're a guy, some guys think in the future, some really don't. I'm one of the guys that didn't realize how it was going to affect my back later on in life, and I'm paying for it a bit now. But that's one of the things I was too prideful to ask for help to, lift up a JFS so we can install it in the F-16, or pushing like a 3,000-pound hydraulic cart on your own, lifting travel pods, one in each arm, and lifting, but not with your knees, not lifting with your legs, lifting with your back, lower back. So many different things that we did as guys in the Air Force. I'm sure some of my buddies can attest to that. But I can say that pride really And that was just one simple thing. Another one, let me get back to this. Another one that's been a bigger one has been me being too prideful in seeking the help and actually going through with it. Several times I had just talked the talk, didn't walk the walk. I knew I needed help, I didn't seek it. And that was my pride. I would always excuse myself and justify not seeking the help. I thought therapists and psychiatry, or therapy really, therapists, thought therapists were just Looney Tunes that couldn't help me out. I thought self-help books were, for weak people. And that's just the stuff I would tell myself, because my family I never saw that in my family, reach out for help like that for any sort of psychological issues, or they would never really admit that they had a problem when there was a problem. That's how I grew up. Now there was small admissions for small things. Wouldn't really affect you in the long run. It's just these little things, but the important stuff, it would be more of a deflection. Very uncomfortable subjects, having to face yourself. And every time my pride would warp into ego, because I thought I had figured it out. I thought I had it all figured out in my head. But really all I did was just push it down, compartmentalize it and push it down and deflect. And later on, as I was growing up in life, it would just, when I would drink too much sometimes it would come out, not every time, but sometimes it would come out, and depending on my mood. But see, and then I would tell myself afterwards, like, oh, I really didn't like how I felt. But it started to develop into habits. But that was my pride not letting me, I wasn't facing myself and not letting myself heal and progress and get out of my head and get out of that stage of my life. And it consumed me, and it developed extremely terrible habits. I suggest tabling the pride every once in a while and grounding yourself in truths, not just self-truths, but the truth. Reflecting, being aware, staying aware, being mindful of the here and the now. So I don't have specific hyperlinks, but I can tell you, and you can do the research, because the research is there if you so choose to find it. Pride creates barriers, what I've talked about. Keeps men from admitting mistakes or weaknesses, because we've been told, especially in my generation from a younger age, and the previous generation before me, well, more so, was told this. It could be seen as a form of weakness. It can be used against you if you were to fall prey to your vulnerabilities and let that out. Let your partner, your wife, your husband know. And really all they want is to help. Presumably. They're your partner, they're your wife, they're your husband. They want to help. Hopefully they want to help. I'm not trying to be doubtful, but I do know, and this may be something that you've thought about, because this has hindered me in the past too. I was afraid to be vulnerable. Fear is a big thing, but I was afraid to be vulnerable and succumb to my vulnerabilities and tell this person that I trust, that I think that I can trust, about these vulnerabilities, only for them to use it against me later on. And really what I was doing in those moments was projecting my own insecurities. Because say, for instance, that I did tell them my vulnerabilities. I told them my weaknesses. I told them what was on my mind, how I was feeling inside emotionally. And they did use it against me in an argument in the future, later on. Well, I mean, what can you really do? They've shown their true colors. That doesn't fall on you. You got the information out. And if they choose to use it against you like that, then you need to start reassessing, reassessing if you're going to stay with this person or not, because that is really messed up. But also, it doesn't fall on you because you got the information out. That weight's lifted. So that says more about them than it does about you. So opening up, a lot of men will think that their woman or husband or however is going to use it against them. But don't use that as an excuse to not face yourself and to not be vulnerable, because that will hinder you. That's your pride and that's your ego talking. I can guarantee you that. It doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you weak at all. That puts the ball in their court and how they use that information later on to either empathize with you, or they can succumb to being a lesser person and using your vulnerabilities against you, in which case is messed up, obviously. And I know it happens, but I don't think it's like a common thing. I would hope not. I haven't seen the data for that, but I'm going to think the best of people until they prove me wrong. Until it's proven otherwise, rather. If we sit in our pride and ego and we let that hold us back, that's going to trap us in isolation. I've talked about this in previous videos. We start to isolate ourselves, and that's not a good place to be as a man. I can guarantee you that. It's great to be on your own with your family or however, but like just being alone, being by yourself and your own thoughts, not a good place to be. If we can let go of that pride and that ego that would trap us there and build real connections, increase our resiliency, and find more of a purpose, so that way we don't find a purpose, rather. So that way we don't get trapped within ourselves and our thoughts, and we just are in a constant cycle, and we never come out of the lack of self-respect and self-esteem, and we just project all our insecurities everywhere else instead of dealing with them. Instead of taking the ego and the pride and the ego and the arrogance out and facing ourselves and handling these issues that I know that some of us have, some of us tend to have. I think it's more manly to, I don't think I know. I know it's in my heart, it's more manly to go ahead and fess up. If you know you need to make a change, if you know exactly what you need to do, because if it's making you uncomfortable thinking about it or talking about it, you know that's a sign that it's probably you're doing something right. Because change is uncomfortable, but if we can embrace it, if we can embrace being uncomfortable for a little while, in the long run, it's going to help us out immensely. I'm going to end on this quote, and this is Eckhart Tolle. Great. It's Eckhart Tolle. If you don't know who he is, or if you do know who he is but are not familiar, then you need to go check this man out. It's outstanding. The ego cannot tell the difference between an event and its reaction to that event. Every ego is a matter of selective perception and distorted interpretation. Only through awareness, not through thinking, can you differentiate between fact and opinion. Only through awareness are you able to see. There is the situation, and here's the anger I feel about it, and then realizing there are other ways of approaching the situation, other ways of seeing it, and dealing with it. If you sit in your ego and pride, that's going to hinder you from seeing the truth, from differentiating between an emotional response or reaction, or getting into your emotions about how you are seeing things or how you would like to see things, rather than being aware and seeing things as they actually are. That is what I think a lot, not just men, are missing in the world right now, is not letting ego and pride disrupt or disorient what is actually happening. So if you can cut that out, I liken it to the atmosphere is made up of 78% nitrogen, okay? 21% oxygen, and then 1% trace other gases like argon and carbon dioxide and all this other stuff, right? So focusing on the past, that's your ego. Think about that. If you focus on the past, that's your ego, because these are, maybe you've had past accomplishments, but you're only sitting on that. There's so many more things that you could be doing, but it's like, oh well, I did this one time, so I'm a pretty great person because I did this one thing that one time really well. Rather than, all right, you did something really good. It's nice to be proud of it, but let's move forward. Let's not sit on our laurels. Let's keep going. So that's your ego, which that would make up the 1%. 1% of the atmosphere should be your ego in the past, like living in the past, rather, not your ego. Living in the past should be the 1%. Because you can learn from the past, that's great, but if you sit in the past, I mean, what good is that going to do you? If you focus on the future, that's pride. So the future would consist of the 21% oxygen. Because you need to make plans, you need to have confidence in yourself, right? Pride will be in the future. That's 21%. Being proud of who you are, but proud of all the stuff that you will do, because you know you can do it. That's pride. That's the 21%. But the 78% is the hardest part for us to grasp. Focus on the present. That's humility. That's the 78% that you need to be focusing on, is humility and grounding yourself. That's what I talked about earlier. Grounding yourself in the present, being mindful and being aware. That way, pride, ego, arrogance doesn't get in the way from you making real, tangible, effectual progress for your now and for your future. I've got a few, it's good stuff. I hope it's good stuff. I've got a few resources that are going to be down in the description. Ego is the Enemy is an audiobook. It's outstanding. I listened to it this past week. I've just finished it. Amazing. Just give it a listen. You can glean so many things from there. I've got, of course, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Dr. Joe Dispenza. There's works from Eckhart Tolle that I quoted here just now. Check him out, or if you've got time. Hopefully you've got time. Check some of these out. Ed Milet is a great motivational speaker. He's got a ton of stuff. Same with Tony Robbins. All right, those are just some name drops there. And I've really enjoyed making this one because pride and ego really can and will get in the way, fellas, of us making progress on our journeys to being our best selves. And this day and age, we don't need that. We don't need that. We need to rise above. We need to come back and be the men that we know that we can be, and the men that everybody that loves us knows that we can be. So, I know you can do it. I believe in you. I believe in you. If you got any questions, reach out. I will help in any way that I can. I'm not a licensed therapist or psychiatrist, of course. I always have to say that. And if you're returning and if you're gleaning anything from any of the videos I'm making about this, then I've helped somebody. And that's the whole point. Getting my journey out there and getting letting you know that you're not alone and that there are resources for you to start, at least start. So I hope y'all enjoyed it as much as I did making it. And as always, I hope y'all have a great week and a great weekend, and I will see you next Thursday on the next weekly check-in. All right, fellas, keep your heads up. Y'all take care. We'll see you.